When people talk about the African diaspora, someone almost always says, well, all humans came from Africa. And technically, that's true. The earliest humans did come from Africa. But if science tells us that, what should it mean for how we define the African diaspora? It reminds us of a shared human origin. Yes, but it doesn't collapse the diaspora into biology. Because here's the thing, the African diaspora isn't about DNA. It's not a biological category. It's a historical story about movement, about people building communities across borders and oceans, and about how those communities stay connected to Africa through memory, culture, and creativity. A diaspora is about routes, not roots. It isn't written in our genes. It's written in the ways people travel, remember, and remake the world around them. Hi, you're in class with Dr. T. To understand that, the late great historian Colin Palmer breaks this history into 5 big streams of movement. These streams are different. They happen in different eras, and they don't collapse into a single story. But together, they show us something powerful. The African diaspora has always been polycultural. It's built out of contact, conflict, creativity, and resistance. Let's walk through those 5 streams. The first stream isn't really a cultural diaspora yet. It's the story of early humans leaving Africa tens of thousands of years ago and populating the world. These early migrants weren't Africans in the cultural sense. They weren't carrying a shared identity or building a community tied to Africa. So this isn't the African diaspora as we mean it today. What this stream does remind us is that a common origins is not the same thing as a shared diasporic identity. The African diaspora is built on history, not biology. The second stream is where things start to feel more like what we think of as a diaspora. Starting in what's now Nigeria and Cameroon, Bantu-speaking peoples began migrating slowly, steadily across Central, Eastern, and Southern Africa. As they moved, they carried more than just themselves. They carried language, technologies, agriculture, political systems, and artistic traditions. Think of this as the spread of a cultural ecosystem. These migrations gave rise to major civilizations. Great Zimbabwe became a thriving urban center tied into long-distance trade. And the Kingdom of Congo built religious and political traditions that would later shape African diasporic religions in the Atlantic world, i.e. the Americas, Brazil, Haiti, the US. On the Swahili coast, Bantu-speaking communities connected Africa to Arabia, Persia, and India. This stream matters because it shows that diasporas aren't always about forced movement. They can also be about expansion and exchange, about building connections that last. By the third stream, Africans are no longer just moving within the African continent. We start to see African presence across the Mediterranean and the Indian Ocean worlds, centuries before Columbus ever set sail. In the Roman Empire, Africans appear as soldiers, traders, artisans, performers, and yes, sometimes as enslaved people. In the Indian Ocean world, Swahili city-states like Kilwa, Zanzibar become major hubs, linking the East Africans to Arabia and India. African sailors and soldiers helped shape communities in India, where Sindhi and Habishi people still live today. Malik Amaba, an Ethiopian-born man, even rose to power as a military leader in the 17th century India. And let's not forget the Zanzi Rebellion, a massive uprising of East African laborers in Mesopotamia in the 9th century. These weren't silent figures in someone else's story, they were agents of their own history. This stream reminds us that the African diaspora is much older than the Atlantic slave trade and has always been global. Stream 4 is the most familiar and the most brutal stream. Starting in the 15th century, European empires forcibly removed millions of Africans and transported them across the Atlantic. Brazil alone received over 4 million people. This wasn't just about labor. The Atlantic slave trade helped build modern capitalism. It helped build modern racism. Laws like Virginia's slave codes or France's Code Noir made racial hierarchy a legal reality. Scientists and philosophers invented racial categories to justify slavery, right? They invented them. But in the middle of all that violence and dehumanization, Africans and their descendants built new worlds. They created voodoo in Haiti, Santeria in Cuba, and Candomblé in Brazil. They built Creole languages like Haitian Creole and Gullah Geechee in the US. African rhythms met European instruments and indigenous traditions to produce samba, rumba, blues, gospel, jazz, and eventually hip-hop. And they resisted. Runaway communities known as maroon communities forced treaties with colonial powers. The Haitian Revolution overthrew slavery and colonial rule in 1804, shaking the world. This stream is central to modern history. It shaped the invented racial order we live with today, but it also gave birth to some of the most enduring traditions of resistance and creativity. The fifth stream is the world we live in now. It's a story of modern migrations shaped by colonialism, labor, war, and politics. Some of these movements were part of Back to Africa projects, like the founding of Sierra Leone and Liberia. Others were mass migrations to cities and new countries. In Britain, the Windrush Rush generation reshaped culture through music, literature, and labor. In France, the Negritude movement created a shared intellectual space between Africa and the Caribbean. In the US, the Great Migrations transformed cities like Chicago and New York, while post-1965 immigration brought new African communities to Europe and to the United States. Latin America and the Caribbean showed us that the diaspora isn't just about movement, but also persistence. Communities like the San Basilio de Palenque in Colombia and Afro-Mexican communities along the Costa Chica keep history alive. In places like Iran, Turkey, and Oman, Zanzibar, African-descended communities remain part of a long Indian Ocean story. What ties all of these streams together isn't race, it's cultural invention. Across every stream, people built connections to religion, language, music, and food. Yoruba orishas merged with Catholic saints. African ingredients and cooking styles blended with indigenous and European traditions. African polyrhythms and storytelling shaped everything from samba to jazz to hip-hop. This isn't purity, it's polycultural. And it's what has always made the African diaspora dynamic, resilient, and global. In conclusion, the African diaspora isn't one story. It's five overlapping, intersecting journeys. The first stream reminds us of our shared human origin. The second shows how African language and cultures expanded across the continent. The third proves African presence in the wider world long before Columbus. The fourth shaped modern racism and resistance. And the fifth shows us a living diaspora still being made today. People of African descent are connected not by DNA, but the routes traveled, roots remade, and histories carried forward. This is a story of movement and imagination, a story that shaped the modern world and continues to shape its everyday.